Hey guys, Welsknight here, and welcome back to another Total War Warhammer online battle replay. So, I am playing as the Empire, and my opponent is playing as the Dwarves over here. So, we're going to pause the battle before we get into it and just kind of go over the armies a little bit. Basically, I've got a main line made up of greatswords because they have good armor piercing, and Dwarves are pretty heavily armored. I've got a Sunmaker Hellstorm rocket battery, which is a very powerful anti-infantry artillery piece. I've got Boris Todbringer as a lord again, and then a Empire captain over here for support, so they're going to be buffing up my men. Over here, I've got a couple of Empire knights hiding in the woods for cavalry, just because the Dwarves do not have any cavalry whatsoever. So that will give me a definite mobility advantage on the battlefield. And then I've got two more Empire knights hiding in the woods over here. Now, the Dwarves have a relatively standard dwarf army. I will point out that I did make one mistake when picking my army. I did not bring anything that could counter gyrocopters. So if my opponent had brought gyrocopters, I would have been in trouble because I have no skirmish infantry whatsoever. And I didn't think of it, and I realized it afterwards, but luckily my opponent did not actually bring gyrocopters. So he's got a couple of grudge throwers, which are basically a catapult. He's got some miners up front as just kind of his basic meat shield infantry. Over here he's got some dwarf warriors with great weapons. We've got longbeards to kind of buff everything out, and more dwarf warriors with great weapons over here. He's got a Thane, and he's using Thorgrim as his lord, and then he's got a bunch of quarrelers with great weapons, which is not really a choice that I think is a good idea. I think he should have just gone with the standard quarrelers, because the ones with great weapons are a little bit more expensive, and realistically, if your quarrelers are getting engaged in melee combat, that's not really a fight they want to be in anyway, although they are halfway decent compared with most ranged units in the game. Most skirmishers in Warhammer are not good in melee at all. Quarrelers can hold their own, but they're really not meant for that fight. They're a little bit better, but they're still not going to be a melee infantry unit. And then he's got some iron breakers back here, very expensive unit as well. So let's start getting into the battle. They form up on this hill, good defensive position, very common for the Dwarves to kind of play defensively up on top of the hill. Unfortunately for him, this rocket battery has a range of 480, which is, as far as I know, the largest range in the game. I don't think there's anything that has more range than a rocket battery. And the reason I brought that unit is because ranged unit, basically the Dwarves like to play defensively. They get a strong defensive formation, and then they just kind of camp because their infantry are very slow. They don't have any cavalry, and really they're best played from a defensive position where you force the enemy to attack you, and he's got the grudge throwers here to kind of rain artillery fire at me. If I can use my rocket battery, he basically has the choice of either coming across to fight me or standing there and basically just taking massive damage from my rocket fire, which should be kicking off pretty soon here. We're going to see some pretty crazy damage as this rocket over here shoots just massive amounts of artillery fire into these dwarven ranks. So, let's just fast forward a little bit more, and there we go. You can see the damage when it comes in, and just look at that, doing massive damage to these dwarven infantry units. Not really a good idea to just stand there and take that, because these units are not going to last very long. Dwarven infantry is relatively good, but it's not, you don't want to just sit there on the hill and take that. So my opponent starts moving his men forward to kind of come and try and attack me over here. He's going to leave his grudge throwers back undefended, which is not really the best idea, because I've got my cavalry over here that eventually is going to be able to come and attack his grudge throwers if he just leaves them undefended. But you can see this quarreler unit, after just a couple of volleys, is already down to half. His longbeards, which are really kind of the backbone of his army, are taking some pretty significant damage as well. Longbeards have an effect where they buff all the other units around them and give them better traits. So taking out the Longbeards is basically going to reduce the effectiveness of his army. He's also left his Grudge Throwers back, and they're going to start shooting at my Great Swords right here. You can see I've already taken some damage, and that Great Sword unit is going to get beat up pretty bad as these two forces kind of move together. But my Hellstorm Rocket Battery is just wrecking his infantry line as he moves forward, doing all sorts of nasty things to them. This Quarreler unit is basically out of the fight already. It's not good. I mean, look at the damage here. See if we can get another volley. And the other mistake that he's making is he's clumping basically all of his units up in a nice little clump. Just look at this. Look at that come in and just lay waste. It's just laying waste to his men. There's a unit of Longbeards that's down to half. Here's another one that's down to almost half. I mean, these units being all clumped up right in here, this is a very tempting target for artillery units like that rocket battery, because it's not an extremely accurate unit, but when your men are all clumped up this close together, I mean, just my artillery can just be devastating. I mean, look at this. These units aren't even really going to make it into the fight before they reach me. And that's not good for my opponent, because Dwarves have some significant disadvantages as it is. And they don't, this is all the faster they go. They don't have any cavalry, they don't have any flying units other than gyrocopters to come and harass me. They don't have any magic or spells. I'm going to charge my infantry or my cavalry over here and just start harassing these dwarf warriors, and then I'm going to pull them out pretty much immediately. He's going to send his guys over to start assisting and supporting them. I'm going to get a nice charge on these Quarrelers and basically knock them all out, and then from there I'm going to start pulling these cavalry off so they can go and attack these Grudge Throwers out there and get them out of the fight. Now I've started moving my men down so I can get a nice downhill charge. I've also started moving my cavalry over here. I'm going to come and flank from behind. And my rocket battery is going to keep firing into his men, and there's a unit of Longbeards that didn't even make it into the main fight. Here's a unit of Quarrelers that really didn't even make it into the main fight. I mean, his units have just been devastated by my rocket battery, and they're doing all sorts of nasty things. And then on top of that, my great swords are going to come down and start messing up his infantry really well, because great swords have that nice armor-piercing damage. They have a nice bonus against infantry. It's not going to be good for him. Now, over here, my Empire Knights have gotten into these Grudge Throwers, and they're going to wrap them up pretty quickly, and then once they're done, they're going to start charging back so they can come assist with the main fight. He's got a bunch of his units kind of off over here, and that's a decent place for the Quarrelers to be, but these melee units, you want to have them in this fight, because they're not really doing anything right now. They're just marching towards me. And I'm already, you can see, I'm wrapping up some of these guys. My cavalry's coming in here to take out the Quarrelers. My great swords have wrapped up one fight already, and these great swords are going to head off and assist some of these other units pretty quick. I do need to deal with these Quarrelers over here, but all in all, I mean, this fight has already really kind of turned in my favor. I've also got my rocket battery, which is completely out of ammo now at 143 kills, most of which is on pretty tough dwarven infantry. They're basically done. They've done their job. They've paid for themselves, and they've also forced my opponent to leave his defensive position up on top of that hill. And now I've got the cavalry advantage with all these Empire Knights. They're going to come through, mess up these dwarf warriors, mess up the Quarrelers, and really all my infantry over here needs to do is just not completely die and run away. So not a really big deal. I've got this great sword running off. That's the one that was taking grudge thrower fire at the beginning. They took some pretty significant damage from that, but it's not going to be enough to turn this battle in my opponent's favor. We've got Boris in here messing up their Thane, doing some damage there, trying to mess him up, and I'm going to have him turn and fight Thorgrim pretty quickly as well. So all in all, we're doing pretty good. We've got my cavalry over here messing up these units that have kind of been piecemealed off on their own, the Quarrelers, the Dwarven Great Warriors, these guys are not going to like being in this fight, especially since I can basically just cycle charge them to death. These Great Swords right here are going to charge in and take out these Quarrelers right here. I've got another fight going on over here that I'm winning very handily, and those Great Swords are going to come in and be able to help. These warriors, the Dwarves over here, are about to get just wrecked by my cavalry. Just, yeah, not a good day. Not a good day at all. It's a bad day to be a dwarf. Man. Things are not going well. Things are not going well. And over here, we're doing pretty good things. You can see we've got my Lord doing pretty good, and my Empire Captain are doing pretty good. The rest of my Great Swords infantry has pretty much already routed, but as my cavalry mop up this fight, they're going to be able to come charging in and just do horrible, rotten things to this blob of infantry. It's not going to go very well. So, by having this massive cavalry and mobility advantage, they're going to be able to come in and mop up. And I've got this greatsword that's going to charge right in and get a nice flank in the back there to do pretty well, too. So, this is not a good fight. This is not a good fight for the dwarves. They're in rough shape. They did win the infantry engagement, but I only had 4 units of greatswords. And this unit is in pretty good shape, to be honest. So, they're going to be able to come in and do some pretty nasty things as they get into the back of all these dwarven infantry here. It's going to be bad. And then I've got my cavalry just basically mopping up these remaining units. I've got another cavalry unit way over here that's doing okay. All in all, pretty good stuff. Let's take a little screenshot there. There we go. Maybe we can use that for the thumbnail. But you can see, here we go. We've got a nice charge coming in pretty soon. I'm going to be bringing these cavalry into the back. Ooh, blasting charges. Didn't even notice those guys. Huh. There you go. Here, we've got this charge coming in. And just look at that. They're just going to come through and devastate the back ranks of these dwarves. And we're going to see these dwarves start to rout pretty soon. Now, my lord is actually taking some damage, and he's going to start running away in a display of amazing bravery. But at this point, my cavalry is basically uncontested. My opponent doesn't have any skirmishers left that can deal range damage to them, and I can basically just repeatedly cycle charge forever until my opponent has nothing left to fight me off with. My great swords are also holding up pretty well. I've got my Empire Captain coming back from routing, I believe. My Lord is going to start coming back from routing here pretty soon. Yeah, it's just not a good day to be a dwarf, without a doubt. All of this cavalry advantage is a really big thing, because I can basically just keep cycle charging just constantly, dealing that morale damage, dealing that damage by charging these guys into the flanks and into the backs. You can see I'm preparing for another charge over here. And these dwarven units are starting to rout and waver and fall apart. And there you go. They're crashing. And I've got my cavalry coming in for a final charge to finish them off, but they rout before I can get that charge off. So, let's talk a little bit about how we did. My great swords did some work. This guy, this is the unit, I believe, that took all that grudge thrower fire and routed relatively early. These 2 units of great swords did very well, definitely paid for themselves. I got a lot of work done with my Empire Knights, more morale damage than actual kills, but they definitely did their part to force my enemy. I mean, I was able to disrupt all of his skirmishes and his formations. This rocket battery did awesome things. It only got 145 kills, which, and I say only, that's a massive amount of kills. That's the second highest amount of kills in my army. But the big important thing that this did was it forced my opponent to come to me rather than making me attack him when he had a strong defensive position with an uphill advantage and skirmishers behind the lines and all that kind of stuff. This made him come to me, and it did some work and really kind of messed up his army and his strategy, got him to clump together and break apart. So definitely like the pick of the Hellstorm rocket battery against the dwarves, because the dwarves play so defensively. As far as his army goes, his grudge throwers got more kills. Well, actually, Thorgrim himself did pretty well. His miners here did okay, but I mean, these Longbeards were pretty much taken out before they even got a chance to get into the fight. And his Quarrelers got wrecked by my cavalry. His Ironbreakers, which are a very expensive unit, only got 21 kills. I mean, it just didn't work out for him. I won't say that my opponent played badly. I mean, sure, there were some mistakes that were made, but overall, I mean, this is a pretty standard Dwarf army pick, I think. I would have liked to have seen regular Quarrelers instead of great weapons, and maybe a Gyrocopter just for a little bit of aerial thing. As I said, I had nothing here to counter or fight Gyrocopters, so I would have been in trouble. With Gyrocopters would have just done horrible things to this army, so that was a bad choice on my decision, but luckily it worked out for me. All in all, good game to my opponent, McInnes Durin, I guess. And it was a fun battle, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap that one up right here, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I do appreciate it, and it really helps out my channel. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. There are links in the video description below, so check that out as well. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll definitely see you next time.